Interesting.
I am a person that very much respects the idea of consent. And I pray that over the coming months, when I participate with full volition and total cooperation in any legal inquiry, we'll get to see how the justice system operates in the United Kingdom.
Russell Brand.
Hello everyone, how are you doing? You alright? Today we'll be taking a look at the many faces of Russell Brand and investigating his convenient transformation from hedonistic clown obsessed with the pleasures of the flesh to self-styled guru facing serious prison time, his strange interactions with P. Diddy and Jimmy Savile, plus a lifetime of chaos and degeneracy. So let's start at the beginning. Russell Edward Brand was born to a relatively poor family in Essex, England on the 4th of June 1970. His father left home when he was just 6 months old, leaving Russell with a sense of duty to look after his mother and be the man of the house. When he was 8 years old, his mother was diagnosed with cancer multiple times, which meant that Russell had to live with relatives for a lot of his childhood, due to his mother needing to get treatment. This unfortunate start in life had a big impact on Russell, who describes this period as being isolating. He was an outsider, moving from temporary home to temporary home, with this lost feeling only being exacerbated when he was abused by one of his school tutors, with him later linking this trauma to his issues with intimacy and addiction. At the age of 14, he developed an eating disorder characterized by periods of binge eating, then vomiting, then fasting, which he used as a way of exerting some form of control over his spiraling existence. Brand was a sensitive, imaginative child with a flair for performance, but was prone to mood swings and intense emotions. He was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and later identified as having bipolar disorder, which was both a blessing and a curse for him. This erratic nature would be channeled into his theatrical tendencies, and at the age of 15 he appeared in a school production of Bugsy Malone. But even with this creative avenue to explore, he still felt like an alien in his own culture, something different to what he saw around him. So he set his mind on becoming famous, as he felt that this was the path to power, value and connection that he was sadly missing in his life. Now 16 years old, he left home due to a disagreement with his mother's new boyfriend and joined a group of lost boys which he hoped would offer the tribe that he longed for. He started to smoke cannabis in an effort to fit in with the older boys, but would sometimes smoke too much, become paranoid and hide in a bush for hours, convinced that he was being chased. He then moved on to taking LSD and ecstasy. Russell's relationship with his father was an unusual one, with him claiming that he was a distant figure and the interactions between them both was awkward and inappropriate. One time when he was just 16, his father took him on holiday to Thailand and brought him a lady of the night, then got two for himself, the greedy bugger. When Russell left school, he attended an academy for theatre arts, with his fees being funded by Essex County Council, but after just 1 year he was expelled from the academy for using illegal drugs and his poor attendance record. But this didn't dampen his lust for fame, and soon he was appearing as an extra on British TV shows such as The Bill or a children's show called Mud. His lust for hedonistic pleasure was equally as strong, so he began to use crack cocaine and heroin, with him describing crack as making him feel like a king for 10 minutes then a rat for the rest of the day, and comparing heroin to being wrapped in love, but it was a love that would kill you. His addictions would soon consume him in a haze of living in squalid homes, selling his possessions and stealing his mother's items to fund his insatiable thirst for more. This unquenchable desire led him to work as a postman so that he could meet single women and open letters to steal the money that was inside. His 20s were dominated by his heroin addiction, which he describes as a great big smacky cuddle. This brown poisoned embrace would take its toll on Brand, who developed abscesses from injecting, lost weight and faced multiple overdoses. He was also getting in trouble with the law, being arrested in a raid at his friend's home where he is found with drugs on him. Then a few weeks later he was arrested arrested again while walking down the street with drugs. In total, he was arrested 12 different times. Despite his problems, he still had natural charisma which propelled him forward onto the stand-up comedy circuit, but would often perform under the influence of heroin, slur his words, collapse on stage and get heckled by the audience. The year 2000 was a big turning point for him as he reached 4th place in a stand-up comedy competition. Although he didn't win, he did meet his agent here, so started to get more work in show business, going on to debut at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. He also got a job presenting a show on MTV UK where he travels around nightclubs in Britain and Ibiza showing off the nightlife in his whimsical way, though he was sadly fired from this job when he turned up to work dressed as Osama bin Laden the day after September the 11th. Plus he brought his drug dealer to the MTV studios, which didn't help. Russell Brand's chaos was less rebellion and more self-sabotage, but he now had his toe in the door of show business, and later that year he starred in a documentary program where he looked at cultural taboos, with him being drunk or on heroin during most of the filming. He then started to host an indie rock show on a local London radio station, but was sacked from this job when he read out adult material live on the air on his daytime slot. The next big turning point in his life came in 2002 when he was arrested for doing heroin in the toilet during a Christmas party. After this, his agent arranged for him to go into rehab, where Russell started on the 12-step program, giving him a focus on a divine higher power than himself and helping him to break his addiction to Class A drugs and replace it with Eastern religions like Buddhism and transcendental meditation. He was now freed from the brown shackles that bound him and ready to unleash himself upon an unready world. In 2004, Russell Brand got his big break when he became the host of Big Brother's Big Mouth, which was a spin-off of the massively successful voyeuristic reality TV show Big Brother. Russell was an instant hit with fans. The mix of his unique theatrical speech patterns, part jester, part philosopher speaking truth to power, and his half Rasputin, half Charles Manson aesthetic were a breath of fresh air on British television, and soon he was being asked to appear on sitcoms and launched his first nationwide comedy tour called Shame, which drew upon embarrassing incidents in his life. He also returned to MTV, where he hosted a chat show interviewing stars like Tom Cruise and Uma Thurman. He was given a radio show on BBC Radio 2 which regularly drew 400,000 listeners, and he got his own TV show with the imaginatively named The Russell Brand Show. He was the man of the moment, the famous star that he had always dreamed of being, a diamond in the rough that came good in the end, and he was celebrated for being a womanizing ex-junkie who was sometimes thoughtful, sometimes funny, but always larger than life.
Hey, come on, just get on the horse, show it you're the boss, show it you're the boss. Am I the boss? He goes horse riding every day, I've only been once.
It wasn't all good though, and even at this early stage of his career, problems with his conduct were starting to be noticed, with pop star Danny Minogue saying in an interview that he was a bit of a vile predator who wouldn't take no for an answer. But this was overlooked by everyone at the time, as he was the goose that was laying the golden, somewhat grubby egg. In 2007, he left Big Brother's Big Mouth and thanked the producers of the show for taking the risk of employing an ex-junkie twerp. He was now on his way to bigger and better things. He launched his second nationwide comedy tour, hosted the Brit Awards, performed for the Queen at the Royal Variety Show, starred in a BBC documentary called On the Road, and returned to Channel 4 with his hit show Ponderland. He was now everywhere in British media. Love him or hate him, there was no escape from his over-the-top cartoonish persona. He had a few bit parts on TV shows and movies, but his big break in this department came when he appeared on the film Centrinians, where he played a wheeler-dealer school caretaker. He also released a best-selling book titled My Bookie Wook, which the internet tells me is listed as the 89th best-selling book in British history. Oh, how my once glorious land has fallen. An odd detail from this time period is that he interviewed the infamous Jimmy Savile on his BBC Radio 2 show. In this interview, Jimmy claims to be sitting with a beautiful young lady who must remain secret. Then Brand says that he would like to meet him in real life sometime, to which Savile says that he will only meet him if he brings his sister along. But sadly, Russell didn't have a sister, so offers up his female assistant naked to Jimmy Savile. This was all played off as a joke at the time, and no one really paid much attention to this interaction, but this all takes a much more sinister undertone now, given what we know about Jimmy Savile and the things that are alleged against Russell.
And I'm sitting here with a beautiful lady who can't believe that I'm talking to the one and only, supposedly, Russell Brand.
It'd be very nice to meet you one day, Mr. Jimmy Savile, just,
Well,
you know.
if you've got a sister, you could meet me by bringing her along.
I mean, I haven't got any sisters, but...
I don't usually meet fellas, but if you've got a sister, that's okay.
I've got a personal assistant called Marsha, and part of her job description is that anyone I demand she greets, meets, massages, she has to do it. She's very attractive, Jimmy.
Well, that's a good start.
What kind of...
start? You could send her along to do some research.
Would you like her to wear anything in particular, Sir Jimmy?
I'd actually prefer her to wear nothing.
Right, so you want Marsha, my assistant, to meet you naked. Okay, well that's not going to be a problem. Would you pass on my best wishes to your beautiful dinner companion, and perhaps you'd consider coming on the show again in the future?
Who knows? I'm always available, and my beautiful dinner companion will have to remain secret because she is of outstanding beauty.
Ooh.
And as such, if you saw her, you would lust after her.
Brand was now a staple in the tabloid press due to his womanising and provocative behaviour. He won the prestigious award of Shagger of the Year 3 times in a row in the Sun newspaper, and over the years has been linked to numerous women, including model Kate Moss, and rumours of him having a short relationship with Peaches Geldof when she was 17 and he was 31. These rumours were not helped when her father Bob Geldof insulted Russell while receiving a trophy at the NME Awards.
Russell Brand, what a...
In 2008, while doing a live show in Northampton, Russell made a hoax call to the police saying that he had just seen a man responsible for a number of indecent assaults. This event obviously drew criticism, with the Guardian newspaper saying that this showed catastrophically poor judgment. The police decided not to prosecute him but discouraged him from doing it again. Russell later apologised for this hoax call. This was all quickly forgotten as the business that he was in didn't just tolerate it, it thrived on it. Mr. Brand was big news in Britain but still unknown in America, so drew skepticism when he was chosen to host the MTV Music Awards in the USA. During his time hosting the awards, he implored the audience to vote for Barack Obama, insulted the then President George W. Bush, compared Britney Spears to Jesus, and made rude comments about one of the Jonas Brothers who was 16 years old at the time, with Russell implying that he had intercourse with the young man. All this didn't go down too well with the American viewers, and he started to get death threats, plus celebrities like Paris Hilton speaking out against him. But Russell was a man of controversy, knowing the power that it holds over the media, and all of this outrage was great for ratings, with him getting 20% more viewers than the year before. So he was asked to host it again the following year, which gave the awards show the highest ratings it had had since 2004. Brand wasn't a rebel storming the gates but a court jester. His anti-establishment routine, draped in flirtatious charm, was catnip for a media that craves spectacle over substance, and an entertainment industry that craves money over morals. So he now had his toe in the door of American show business and was more than willing to walk through it. Russell's first big Hollywood movie was his part in Forgetting Sarah Marshall, where he played pretty much himself, a flamboyant, verbose rock star named Aldous Snow. This film was a hit and his character was much loved, so offers started to flood in for Russell to appear in more movies, with him starring in the Disney movie Bedtime Stories alongside Adam Sandler later that year. Back in Britain, he was still hosting his BBC Radio 2 show, which would get him into hot water when him and his friend Jonathan Ross broadcast a series of lewd phone messages that they left to a 78-year-old actor named Andrew Sachs, who is best known for his role as Manuel in the comedy show Fawlty Towers. Brand had briefly had a relationship with Andrew's granddaughter but arranged to do an interview with the actor on his show, but was sadly unable to reach him on the phone, so instead left him 4 voice messages on his answer machine. On the first message, Brand joked about both of them appearing on the TV show The Bill, but was interrupted by Jonathan Ross, who shouted, "He To your granddaughter. The next 3 messages were the pair apologising for this outburst, then mocking the 78-year-old actor, with Brand confirming that it was consensual and she wasn't menstrual, and Ross asking if he could marry her. Newspaper The Daily Mail then ran the story highlighting that it was in bad taste, and Brand apologised on his radio show, but the apology mainly focused on attacking the Daily Mail supporting the Third Reich in the Second World War, and played down his prank call when compared to this outrage. Andrew Sachs then made a complaint to the BBC and confirmed that he didn't give permission for these calls to be broadcast. This event then snowballed, getting bigger and bigger, with many stories being printed in the press about what an outrage this was, and it even became international news. In total, the BBC received over 40,000 complaints, making it the 3rd most complained about thing in their history. There was such a media storm over this that it eclipsed news of the 2008 financial crash and the American presidential election, and even the Prime Minister of Britain was forced to address it, with him being quoted to say that the incident was clearly inappropriate and unacceptable. Members of Parliament called for the pair to be sacked from the BBC, and Andrew's granddaughter stated that she was considering making a formal complaint to the police. Brand and Ross were both suspended, with Russell and other members of the production team then resigning. This event created a bit of a divide, with some people in the entertainment industry coming out in support of Brand and Ross, and others claiming that the Prime Minister and members of Parliament should really be focusing on more important issues like the ongoing 2008 financial crash, which is fair enough, I guess. The story did somewhat seem like bread and circuses to keep the plebs distracted from the real problems, but distracted they were, and fans started to protest outside of the BBC in support of Brand while others were out for his blood. The granddaughter was quoted to say this about the pair's suspension from the BBC: "I'm thrilled because justice has been done. It's despicable. Calling me that in public, not only does it damage my relationship with my granddad, but it could permanently damage my life as well." She was part of a gothic burlesque group at the time that called themselves Satanic Extreme. She later went on to team up with the singer Adam Ant and wrote 2 songs about the incident, and claimed that her grandfather didn't speak to her for 8 years, and that this all made his alcohol and drug problems worse. On a side note, the pair made up 10 years later when Brand paid for her to go to rehab as a way of saying sorry. On another side note, between 2006 and 2008, the BBC received 5 complaints from women about Brand's behaviour towards them, but didn't act on these complaints. Funny how these things slip through the cracks when you're a star at the BBC, isn't it? Russell was now pretty much free from any work obligations that he once had in Britain, so he could take his womanising ways to the USA, and that's what he did, appearing on a flurry of TV chat shows with him flirting with the female hosts while he spoke about his anti-establishment ideas of revolution and taxing the mega rich to pay for social programmes.
It's called Revolution, Whoopi, right? Because that Albert Einstein, who if nothing else was clever, said you can't change a system using the thinking that created it. That means if you want to change things, you have to look at alternative ways of thinking. The way things are at the moment, the people that benefit from it don't want it to change. They are happy with it the way it is. That's why things like ecological disaster, economic inequality, global meltdown and war are largely ignored, because they are serving the purpose of the people that are in control. If you want change to come, it will not come from them. I know that within you there is a limitless divine beauty, and within me as well. And if I connect with that, then we'll be okay. And you as well. And Chris, for God's sake.
Give it. He's good for everybody.
Everybody's beautiful.
Now, Russ, I'm nervous to ask this, but you did say at the start of the year that you were considering attempting celibacy. Is that something that you have continued with?
What time do you finish work?
In 2009, he recorded a special for Comedy Central, and later that year he launched a tour of Britain, the USA and Australia. Russell was now getting more and more into politics, with him being part of a celebrity letter to the Independent newspaper to voice his discontent with Israel's treatment of the people of Gaza, in which he is quoted to condemn the cruel and massive loss of life of the citizens of Gaza. The next thing of note is when P. Diddy posted a video with Russell on a private jet on their way to Las Vegas, which the rap star called "What Happens in Vegas Stays in Vegas."
Hey, yo, what's up, y'all? We are on the plane right now, on our way to Vegas. It's called what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
During the course of the video, they describe it as a straight guy date and talk about finding women in the city of sin. Again, this takes on a bit more of a sinister undertone in retrospect. Following the success of Forgetting Sarah Marshall, his much beloved character of Alder Snow was brought back for another movie called Get Him to the Greek, co-starring Jonah Hill, and involving many of the same production team. This film did well, although not as well as Forgetting Sarah Marshall, but the set of Get Him to the Greek is where he met his new buddy P. Diddy and his future wife Katy Perry. Russell was now pretty typecast as the larger-than-life, lovable playboy rogue, a type that had served him well up until this point, a type that had made him a Hollywood star. His stardom was only cemented further when he married pop star Katy Perry in a Hindu ceremony. The pair were a showbiz power couple, so movie roles came pouring in for Russell. Shakespeare, Despicable Me, The Simpsons, nothing was off limits for this kaleidoscope of wit, rebellion and intellect. His rock star persona did start to spill over into real life when he was arrested on suspected battery charges after he allegedly attacked a reporter who was blocking him and his wife on their way to the airport, but he was released the next day. Around this time, he also attended one of P. Diddy's infamous white parties. Russell claims that he spent most of his time speaking to fellow comedian Tom Green and left the party early as he was married.
We're here at the white party. P. Diddy's right up there.
Diddy's over there.
Ashton Kutcher is right up there.
He's over there.
Unbelievable.
Marilyn Monroe just there. She's got something going up her frock.
This video was posted to his YouTube channel and is still on there, so it's no big secret. Things were going well for Russell. He was getting invited to all of the sordid Hollywood parties, and in 2011 he was asked to host Saturday Night Live. He appeared as the Easter Bunny in the animated movie Hop, and he was a fixture on American chat shows flirting with the female hosts, but sadly things would start to take a downwards turn when he divorced Katy Perry. To let his wife know that they were getting divorced, he sent her a text message just before she was due to appear on stage at a live show, with the moment being captured on a documentary the pop star was filming. The pair reportedly didn't sign a prenuptial agreement, so Brand was eligible for half of the $44 million that Katy had earned while they were married, but Russell declined this. The reflection of the Hollywood sign in his eyes was now starting to fade, and this was marked by a movie named Arthur, which he starred in but was a box office flop. Brand would later state that his choice to do this movie was a mistake. The credits had now started to roll on his time as a movie star, but as is the case with Russell Brand, he would soon reinvent himself so the spotlight and fame that he craved never fully went away. In 2012, he hosted the MTV Movie Awards, but this wasn't his finest performance, with his heart seemingly not being in it, and he was criticised for making unfunny jokes. The once natural, boundary-pushing comedy was now feeling forced and stagnant, so he was getting booked less and less. He starred in the movie Rock of Ages, which again bombed at the box office, so he started to transform himself into a political activist, which felt like a logical transition as he had always mixed his worldviews with his comedy. He was now a man on a mission to change the world, remake it into his own shaggy-haired image, and he started out by speaking to a committee at Parliament while dressed like a homeless cowboy from a future dystopian saloon. He was trying to convince them to decriminalise drugs. They didn't listen. Russell had this to say about his day in Parliament: "The whole joint is a deeply encoded temple of hegemonic power." He then aired a documentary on the BBC titled From Addiction to Recovery, which again was aimed at trying to decriminalise drugs. He is quoted to say that he felt compelled to make this due to the death of his friend Amy Winehouse. Russell had become a Buddhist and was selected by the Dalai Lama to host a Buddhist leaders' youth event, as he had proven the power of spirituality to effect change in his own life. Then in the same year, to prove what a centred pacifist he was, he allegedly threw a reporter's phone out of the window, so an arrest warrant was issued for him. Russell claims that he took the iPhone and threw it out of the window as a tribute to Steve Jobs, who had recently passed away. His Hollywood career may have been fading, but his stand-up comedy was still going strong, and his tour called Messiah Complex was a big hit, getting rave reviews worldwide. This tour would lead to one of his more well-known moments when he appeared on a talk show called Morning Joe and flirted with one of the female presenters.
What am I saying? What am I talking about? Don't think about what I'm wearing. These things are redundant,
I'm distracted.
superficial.
Okay.
Don't be distracted. What do you think that gesture means, the way you're touching that bottle? What does that indicate? What is that? What's the subtext of that?
I think we gotta go to break.
You need to lose that ring, Mika, because it don't mean nothing to you. She's grasping for the shaft. She's a shaft grasper.
This was a fairly viral clip on the internet, and the female presenter of Morning Joe would get a lot of pushback about this interview from people online, as she was unaware who Russell Brand was before doing the interview. Back in Britain, he was still on a political mission, writing many articles and showing up on many TV shows to talk about the need of people not to vote as the system is rigged against normal people. This was most well known from another fairly viral moment that he had in an interview with Jeremy Paxman on the BBC. Paxman challenged this idea of not voting and claimed that someone who has never voted shouldn't be the editor of a political magazine. Russell had edited an issue of the left-wing magazine The New Statesman in which the theme was revolution, so Paxman asked Brand what his revolution would look like, to which Brand replied, "A socialist egalitarian system based on the massive redistribution of wealth, with heavy taxation of corporations. I think the very concept of profit should be hugely reduced. I say profit is a filthy word, because wherever there is profit, there is also a deficit." In the same year, he won the Oracle Award at the GQ Awards, but was kicked out due to him mentioning that the sponsor of the event was Hugo Boss, who made uniforms for the Gestapo. He then goose-stepped across the stage while giving his acceptance speech. Russell Brand had now successfully reinvented himself as a left-wing political activist, joining the anonymous Million Mask March. He was really attending protests all over the place at this stage and started to pontificate on his new YouTube series called The Trues, which is a mix of the word true and news. Very clever.
Hello, welcome to Trues on the Move. I'm your host of The Trues, Russell Brand.
This was reasonably successful for him and was a precursor for his later more well-known YouTube show. On The Trues, he talked about the issues of the day from a left-wing perspective. At this stage, he was the darling of the left, having documentaries made about him, doing talks for The Guardian with Owen Jones, and he was voted the 4th most influential thinker in the world by readers of Prospect magazine. But there was a darker side that was being conveniently overlooked. As the same year that all of this was going on, his ex-girlfriend Jordan Martin claimed in her book that she was indecently and physically abused by him. But this news just passed by without anyone really noticing. But some people were starting to notice some strange things about Russell Brand. In the dark recesses of the internet, the conspiracy-minded were talking about Russell Brand being a member of the Freemasons, or linked to satanic occults in some way. A lot of this came from his many tattoos, most notably the number 33 that was on his wrist. They claimed that this was to symbolise the 33 degrees of Freemasonry. This was a big topic of conversation in some corners of the internet, with some people defending Brand, saying that the tattoo was a tribute to his late friend, while others said that he was rubbing the Masonic message in the faces of his viewers. Another of his tattoos is what people called the Pied Piper, and claimed that he was purposely leading people down the path of hedonism and degeneracy. This tattoo looks more like some kind of Hindu deity to me, but this theory wasn't helped when Russell Brand released a child's book with him playing the Pied Piper. Him being a Freemason is a claim that has been brought to his attention a few times, with him making it clear that he is not a Freemason, which is just what a Freemason would say.
ITM72, Mr. Brand, firstly, aggressive. Firstly, explain the number 33 tattooed on your inner wrist. You're a smart man and must know its colossal importance to Freemasonry. Well, it's not Freemasonry, actually. You can't be a Freemason, I don't think, if you've got a criminal record. What to me it means, mate, is this when Jesus died, and I love a bit of Jesus. So it's as simple as that.
Russell had now been preaching his message of revolution by not voting for quite some time, but in 2015, 8 days before the British general election, he uploaded an interview with the Labour leader Ed Miliband to his Trues show, then stated, "I think we have no choice but to take decisive action to end the danger of the Conservative Party." He was now urging his viewers to vote for Labour, but Brand himself was not registered to vote. and Labour lost. This U-turn would lose him a lot of respect from his fans, as this was not the revolution that they were promised, but Russell was unfazed by this and continued his activism, speaking at an anti-racist counter-protest in Newcastle alongside George Galloway, aimed at an anti-Islam protest that was marching in the city to bring attention to the grooming gang scandal. Away from politics, the embers of his Hollywood career were still smouldering, and he voiced a character in the animated film Trolls, plus appeared in a film that sounds pretty interesting, to be honest. This film was called Army of One, and it is based on a true story where Russell plays God and Nicolas Cage plays a man that travels to the Middle East to find Osama bin Laden armed with a samurai sword because God told him to. Russell had long been talking about spirituality, but now he was moving away from politics to focus more on this side of his content, offering his viewers self-help advice and rebranding himself yet again as some kind of humble guru, an enlightened being helping to guide the lost souls to a more noble path. Unbeknownst to Russell, in 2019 the Sunday Times newspaper began inquiries into allegations against Russell Brand, and this investigation would come to turn his life upside down. The man who had spent over a decade preaching redemption was about to face a reckoning of his own. 2020 was a memorable year for everyone, and Russell Brand was no different. He started off this year the same as he left 2019, talking about self-help and promoting his free online self-help course. He was still doing some political activism, but this had taken a backseat for the most part, as most people still had the discordant note of his voting U-turn ringing in their ears, which had eroded what little credibility he had clawed from the cultural swamp. Then the COVID pandemic hit and he would transform again into a scruffy butterfly lapping at the nectar of controversy. At the start of the COVID years, the battle lines had not yet been drawn, so Russell approached his criticisms from the same left-wing framework that had worked for him so well in the past, speaking out against the intentions of the powerful to use this as an excuse to gain more power.
Black Friday, that annual festival of consuming, but during a global pandemic when all of us are asking questions about society and the way that we relate to one another, ought we be trying to sustain these kind of crazy ideas? The answer is yes. The pandemic has taken surveillance of workers to the next level. We are being observed while we work more than ever, even though people working from home has achieved more efficacy and better results. Is the pandemic being used as a tool to create a surveillance state?
Sadly for Russell, the landscape around him would quickly change and shift as left and right realigned in the game of political musical chairs, with Brand now finding himself on the same side of politics with people that he never thought he would be allies with. He started to become more and more outspoken about the safety measures and medications surrounding COVID, but the videos that would get the most views for him were the ones where he was talking about the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset. The more he talked about such topics, the more the mainstream started to frame him as a conspiracy theorist who believed in a shady cabal of people working in the background to control the world. But in his words, he believes in a cabal of people working in plain sight to control the world, and among these people were the WEF. Russell would mostly read news articles, then connect the information to an overarching narrative involving people like Bill Gates and the company BlackRock. Russell Brand was now a truth seeker, following the evidence wherever it took him, and in a strange coincidence, this evidence mostly took him to lots and lots of views on YouTube. Each upload was a Molotov cocktail thrown at the Cathedral of Orthodoxy, and the views poured in like petrol on a bonfire. His view count was also helped by the fact that his videos were both informative and entertaining due to his comedic presentation talking about yet more social taboos. Russell was now firmly on the right wing, mixing with people like Jordan Peterson and Tucker Carlson, so his old left-wing friends started to distance themselves from him. His once ally at the New Statesman's magazine is quoted to say that he has now melded his trad socialist values with all the suspicions and anxieties of the new American right. The more views that Russell got, the more he craved, and his videos got more and more clickbaity, his shocked face on the thumbnail with a title exclaiming that you won't believe what just happened or that this changes everything. A lot of the people that once called him a Freemason were now fully on board with his message and ready to defend him from any of the slander of the mainstream media, but not all of them had given up the idea that he was a Freemason, and some thought that he was brought in to discredit the movement.
Now, for example, someone having a 33 tattoo on their arm, like what's the benefit of that? If you are actually a part of a sort of a secret cartel controlling reality,
do you have to mask that fact? And like, oh yeah, but yeah, you would do that. Oh, what? So it's that many layers of double bluff. I mean, like, for me, that's like, why? And all of a sudden, what are we talking about now? We're not talking about how do you get people to band together to challenge authority. That's the only thing worth talking about. Pointing out corruption, inviting people to go within themselves, to awaken themselves, to confront authority. All the other stuff is just like flim-flam, in my view. Anyway, so that tattoo is because I love the Lord Jesus Christ, and it's a sort of a lucky number, basically, because I thought I was going to die when I was 32. Then I obviously didn't, as you can see. And so now I love the number 33, and when I see it, I feel like I'm on the right path.
In 2022, Russell had one of his videos removed from YouTube due to medical misinformation, so he moved a lot of his content over to Rumble and launched a daily show on this platform called Stay Free. But his popularity on YouTube just kept growing and growing, and he reached over 6.5 million subscribers, each click being a middle finger to the system, the viewer's way of fighting back. Apart from a bit of censorship, things were going great for Mr. Brand. He had successfully transformed himself yet again, a brand new cultural icon for a brand new set of people. But things would start to fall apart for him in 2023 when a Channel 4 documentary was aired giving details of indecent and emotional abuse alleged by 4 anonymous women between 2006 and 2013. One of these women was just 16 years old at the time and Brand was 31. The reports also noted that he allegedly exposed himself to crew members while working on Channel 4's Big Brother's Big Mouth and allegedly urinated in a bottle in full view of everyone while working at the BBC. As we are on YouTube, I won't go into the details of the main allegations, but they are pretty harrowing. Brand denied these claims and is quoted to say that the relationships were always consensual. A lot of his right-wing friends rallied around him, but he was forced to postpone an upcoming tour and his agent dropped him and released a statement that in part read, "Russell Brand categorically and vehemently denied the allegations made in 2020, but we now believe that we were horribly misled by him." I'm not too sure what allegations from 2020 is talking about in this, but maybe there was something from the Sunday Times investigation that I'm missing. YouTube then demonetised his channel under pressure from the British government and presumably advertisers, but his new home of Rumble resisted any attempts to get him removed from their platform. The BBC removed some material featuring him from their archives. He was dropped by charities that he was helping, and the police began an investigation, with other women coming forward with alleged incidents dating back to 2003. Russell was then brought in for questioning by the police but then later released. This was a big win for the people that didn't like him, and they could taste blood in the water, so more and more stories about his alleged past transgressions started to be shared.
This is a well-known open secret from the comedy circuit.
Right.
Something that's been talked about, certainly to my knowledge, for at least the last 5 years. It's something that's been pretty openly discussed in the comedy industry. I think I remember first hearing about it kind of in mid sort of 2017. Deadline ran a story about an incident that happened on a TV show called Roast Battle where jokes were made referencing Brand being an abuser, and they were removed from the broadcast. That obviously happened on a studio floor. So from that point onwards, it was common knowledge within comedy that there were several allegations about Russell Brand, and specifically relating to sexual assault. So from that point onwards, it was well known. It was discussed by multiple comedians in Edinburgh Fringe shows the following year in 2018. Like it was that well known. To be completely honest with you, the story that I had heard was relating to a sexual assault. It was not covered in the documentary. It was a very specific and serious allegation. I was not aware of any of the stories in the documentary. I was surprised watching it how far back this had gone. So it is possible that there's more allegations to come. Look, I think this is a real moment for everybody to consider how this was allowed to happen and how this was allowed to go on for so long, and what are the systemic and institutional failings. If you look at Russell Brand's IMDb page, you see that his television work in Britain starts to dry up around 2018, 2019, and that's simply because increasingly people were just not willing to work with him. Everyone was afraid to talk about it because of the threat of lawsuits, and so the only power people had was to withdraw participation from shows involving Russell Brand. And that goes for everybody. That goes for comedians, that goes for people that work in production. And you can see from his IMDb page that he starts to increasingly only work in America and work on his own podcast channel and YouTube channel.
All of this was only more proof to many of his followers that the deep state were desperate to silence this truth teller and had now revealed itself from the shadows, something that Russell was happy to lean into and talk about on his show. He had long been a man of spirituality, but this was more an appreciation of world religions, one of which was Christianity. Then all of a sudden it turns out the God we thought was dying was just sharpening his blade, and Russell was now a full Christian, being baptised in the River Thames alongside the television survival expert Bear Grylls. In 2024, he promoted a magic amulet that he claimed protected against corruption by evil energies and the lethal signals of Wi-Fi. Plus, he performed a comedy set at the campaign event for the then presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy, for which he was reportedly paid $70,000. The allegations against him were just getting worse and worse, and in 2025 he was sued by 2 women for allegedly indecently assaulting them. Then on the 4th of April 2025 he was charged by the Metropolitan Police with 5 counts. Then after this, 3 more women came forward to the police with allegations against him. Brand's content was now very Christian-centric and pointing out the hypocrisy of the British government, not investigating the grooming gang scandal but finding time to investigate him all these years later. Russell Brand's case is still ongoing, but he seems pretty confident that he will be found innocent and claims to be grateful that he will be given the chance to defend himself against these charges in court.
I've always told you guys that when I was young and single, before I had my wife and family, we were just about a shot over there, my beautiful children, I was a fool, man. I was a fool before I lived in the light of the Lord. I was a drug addict, and an imbecile, but what I never was I've never engaged in non-consensual activity. I pray that you can see that by looking in my eyes. And of course, I'm now going to have the opportunity to defend these charges in court, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. In the meantime, you lot, stay free, and we will be continuing to discuss this matter. Praise the Lord.
The Russell Brand story is a rollercoaster ride of chaotic energy and convenience. It's very convenient that a left-wing media company like Channel 4 released a documentary about Russell Brand only once he had stepped off the reservation, even though he had worked for them for many years. And it's very convenient that Russell Brand sought refuge in the church once the world had turned against him. The media in Britain loved his promiscuous hedonistic persona, and even when he went to America they celebrated this aspect of him. So it's not hard to see why his followers may now suspect that the only reason he is in these troubles is because he spoke out about something that he should have kept his mouth shut about. I obviously don't know the true motivations for anyone involved. Maybe Channel 4 would have still made the documentary even if Russell was still a left-wing activist, and maybe Russell would have become a Christian even if none of this ever happened. But I kind of have my doubts about both. To me, this story clearly illustrates one of the many problems with democracy. It divides people into opposing groups whose only real drive is to win and gain power at any cost, no matter how morally bankrupt it makes them or who they have to side with. In the game of votes, taking home the trophy is all that matters in the end. There's a lot of information about Russell Brand on the internet, most of which I have cut out of this video for the sake of time, but he has done a lot of charity work over the years, most of which hasn't been publicised, so this leads me to believe that in his own way he is trying to make the world a better place. But of course I'll wait to see what comes from the trial before I make any judgments on what kind of man he is as a whole. I'm very interested in language, as words are like a magic spell cast on our brains and dictate how we view reality in all kinds of ways. A word that I kept coming across while researching this video was misinformation. Over and over again I would see this word and wonder what is really being said by the people using it. The definition of misinformation is false or inaccurate information, especially that which is deliberately intended to deceive. We already have a word for this, which is lie. The word lie has been around for a very long time with no problems, so why is this new, more complicated word being used? I'm not fully sure, but to call someone a liar is a direct accusation, something to which they can defend themselves. But to say someone is spreading misinformation is more wishy-washy. The person using this term is just making an observation, and therefore doesn't leave room for a proper defence. That's the best that I could come up for as to why this new word is being used. These disingenuous linguistic tricks seem to be more and more common, and I just thought it was an interesting side note while looking into this story really. Russell Brand is the king of misinformation, and this has earned him over 1 billion views on YouTube and an army of loyal fans, but at what cost? He is currently staring down the barrel of a very long time in prison if found guilty, so let's hope that true justice is served one way or the other.
I suppose my life has been defined by addiction, and addiction is in part a lack of connection, an attempt to synthesize the connection to self, other, and God. God, of your own understanding, perhaps understood as a totality, a sense of unity, a unity of force, a highest principle. When it says in the Old Testament, worship no other gods than me, the implication I offer is that we are a species that worships, and if you do not access the divine, You will worship the mundial. You will worship the profane. You will worship your own identity. You will worship your belongings. You will worship the template laid before you by a culture that wants you, but gets you distracted and relatively dumb.
Watch this video about the man, the myth, the legend, Steven Seagal. Like, comment and share the video to help it out. A big thanks to all of the channel members and the Patreons, and bye-bye.
Enjoy your breakfast, you perverts.